Hey guys, welcome to Rough Riders. I'm Jay Taylor. There's a lot of great camera tech out there to capture and share your adventures. I myself have two GoPro cameras that I take out when I take the side-by-side out and go camping and things like that. But there's something new out that was just announced at the beginning of this month called the Skydio 2. It's a camera drone, but this is unlike any other camera drone that you've seen. And so stick around. I wanted to share a little bit about what makes this thing so special and why I pre-ordered mine. Some of you may have already heard of the Skydio 2, and for some of you this may be something new. Well, I'm going to touch on some of the key features of this drone and really what makes it unique in the industry and unlike anything else out there. Now, I've been wanting a drone for probably 4 years now, ever since a friend of mine let me borrow his DJI Phantom 1. Big mistake on his part. But none of them could do the things that I really wanted to do, right? I wanted something with a great camera, and a lot of the drones have great cameras on them. But I also wanted something that could follow me down the trail when I'm taking the side-by-side out or going off-roading and hiking and things like that. And none of them could really do that. I almost pulled the trigger last year on the Mavic 2 Pro, but once I saw the footage of the active tracking, it really wasn't up to par. Really couldn't keep up. I saw people, that take it out on the trail and it would get stuck behind branches and things like that, and they'd have to go back and get it. I didn't want to deal with any of that. But Skydio launched the Skydio 2 on October 1st. And as soon as I saw this thing, I was blown away. This thing is wicked smart. It's really unique in how it's doing a lot of things. And it almost feels like it was designed for us, guys that had the action camera sort of experience in mind. Now, it has a lot of other uses beyond that, but that is by far one of the greatest advancements in this drone is its object tracking and object avoidance. Let's take a look at some of the footage, and you can see for yourself. I'm going to roll a couple of different clips here that were provided by Skydio. But there's other test footage out there as well from folks that have been part of the beta test program, and this thing is really, really cool. So let's take a look at some of that now. So in this clip, you can see we got a guy on a quad, and the Skydio 2 is on the left, and the DJI Phantom or Mavic 2 Pro is on the right. And you can immediately see that the Mavic 2 Pro loses line of sight of the rider and can't keep up, where the Skydio just follows him right through underneath those branches and everything. Even as he makes those turns, it sticks with him right through the entire trail. That is really, really, really cool. Here's another clip that's being shot, and I think what's 4K 60, so you get great slow motion effects and very, very clear imagery out of this thing. As this Jeep tears through the mud hole. Here's another one where the guy on a quad, and the drone is just zipping around the corners. It's avoiding the trees. It sees the trees, and is able to navigate the environment. So whether you're in the wide open like this guy on the snowmobile or whipping through trees, this thing sticks right with you. Let me show you one more roll, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of this thing. So here's one of a mountain biker. You can see that it's keeping the subject in frame the entire time, even as it's whipping around the trees and this guy's zipping around corners and stuff. It stays with them and keeps the subject in the center of the shot. This is some really advanced technology and how it's doing all of that. I love, this shot here where the guy's on the mountain bike, and he's dropping down through canyons and everything, and the drone's taking different positions as it follows him through the shot. So really, really, really advanced object tracking and subject tracking and obstacle avoidance. So as you can see from the clips, not only can this thing recognize that there's an object in its path, it can plot a flight path around it. So even if you're whipping through trails and trees and things like that, it knows those trees are there, and it can fly around those trees and keep you in frame the entire time. That is really, really impressive. So how does all of this work, right? Well, it really comes down to the platform architecture and the software that they've developed that makes this thing so powerful and so smart. At the core of this thing, it's powered by the NVIDIA Jetson TX2 SoC as well as a separate subsystem with the Qualcomm SC605 SoC for dedicated to the image processing. And that becomes really important, and I'll explain more about that in just a minute. But what they've done is they've taken these two really powerful SoCs and then married them up with 6 4K color cameras just for mapping and navigation, and then a separate camera for capturing the content. And so what it's doing is it's collecting 45 megapixels of information. And then it takes all that data and creates this 360-degree sphere, this bubble around the drone, so that it literally sees everything in every direction in 4K. And so with that, it's able to build this hyper-accurate map, this 3D map of its environment that it's operating in, and update that map 1 million times per second. That's a massive amount of work that's going on inside this thing. But it has the smarts, the processing power, the compute power to be able to handle all that. And that's really, really incredible work what these guys have done. And it truly is a game changer for those reasons. The object avoidance and the object tracking, that's just an example of why this thing is a game changer. But it's the architecture itself that is so unique and so different, because there's nothing out there that's doing anything close to what this thing does. So in addition to building this powerhouse processing, this drone has some very solid specs. So let's take a look at the spec sheet right now so you can see kind of how this thing looks on paper.
Okay, the general size of this thing, when you do the conversion, it's about a size of a ream of paper. It's 8.5 by 11. So it's very compact, it's very mobile. It does not have folding legs like you would see on a Mavic 2, but there's some pros and cons to that regarding durability and sensor accuracy. But it's still very small, very mobile. It'll fit in a backpack without a problem. They include a carrying case. From a flight time, it's about 23 minutes on average, a little more, a little less, depending on how fast you're spinning those propellers. The altitude is up to 1,600 feet, which is plenty for I think most cases. The range that you get out of this thing is up to 3.5 kilometers, which is 2.2 miles. When you're using the remote with the beacon, it's 1.5 kilometers, and with the phone, it is about 200 meters. The autonomy system for autonomous flight, we've already kind of discussed. It's powered by the NVIDIA Tegra GPU, which is a 256-core GPU. And then it's got a dual-core NVIDIA Denver, as well as a quad-core ARM. That's all on the NVIDIA Tegra. Then you have a separate Qualcomm SoC with another 8 cores and another Adreno GPU core for all the image processing. So this thing is quite the powerhouse for that. As we said, it's got 6 4K color navigation cameras, plus a 7th camera for the content collection or content creation. Then you've got the wireless and GPS on there. It's your basic 2.4 / 5 gigahertz 11AC radio that operates in 2040 and 80 megahertz bonded channel mode. So you got plenty of bandwidth as far as that goes. You've got GPS and GLONASS on there. So you've got pretty much everything you would expect out of your basic drone.
Now with that, Skydio gives you 3 ways to fly this thing, as I said. You can fly it with your phone, you can fly it with a beacon, and you can fly it with a controller. Let's take a look at some of those things right now and see what those differences are. Okay, so here's the app. I'm going to keep it paused here. I'm going to keep clicking this just to keep it on this thing so it doesn't advance to the next one. But you can see they give you a lot of the basic controls to control the height, the range, where it's following you from and all that kind of stuff, and to record. And then on top of that, they do give you this library of various controls, right? So you got the tripod mode, the orbit mode. You can do the cable cams and dronies and all of that kind of stuff. So you have all of those sorts of things available to you within the app as well. It is really nice here that they do include street maps and stuff like that, so you can do the long range mission and flight control and all that kind of stuff. And then the ability to quickly download your photos and save them straight to your phone. I mean, that's what you would expect out of an app, right? So the phone app is interesting. It seems like it's a fairly well featured app. But that's not how I plan on flying it. I don't really want to be trying to, use my fingers to control where this drone is and stuff like that from a stationary point. Where I think it gets exciting for adventure-oriented folks like myself is this beacon. Because the beacon can do a couple of different things for you, right? So first off, you can fly the drone with the beacon and use the beacon like a wand. So you can just kind of point in space where you want this thing to go, and the drone will follow that direction. But then, as I said, it's also used for tracking because it's using the GPS. It can actually track the beacon as it's moving through space. So imagine a scenario then where you're ripping through some trails and you've got the beacon in your pocket. Maybe you're mountain biking or you're in a side-by-side or something, and you got the beacon in your pocket, and the drone is tracking that beacon. So I said the beacon extends the distance up to 1.5 kilometers, which is well beyond, it's like a mile and a half, something like that. And so, it gives you this great distance, which does a couple of different things, right? Because it gives the drone enough freedom to be able to make decisions about the environment, and move around trees. So if you disappear behind trees, it can go around the trees and still know where you're at and keeping you in the center of the frame. So even though it can't see you, even though you're not in the shot, it knows where you're at behind those trees. And as you come out the other side, you're already in frame as the drone's there waiting for you. So, that is really, really cool. Now, there's other things you can do with the beacon as well. So you can set the height of where the drone should be, how far away. You can set the position of the drone, of where it should be tracking you from. So if you want it directly in front and flying backwards as you're heading down the trail and tracking you, you can do that. If you want it behind you, it can do that. If you want it off to the side or up in the front right corner, you have that flexibility and the freedom to do that. So let's take a look at some of the footage of the beacon and in action so you can see how that works. So here we got a guy on a one wheel, and you can see it's kind of doing this drone-y shot as it's disappearing out, as pulling back. And that's that 1.5 kilometer range that we're talking about. So you got this great range. And then here now you can see where he's actually disappearing behind some trees, and the drone is staying with him. So it's avoiding the obstacles and stuff like that, making some intelligent decisions, but keeping him in frame because it knows where the beacon's at. So that is some really, really advanced algorithms that are processing all of that data and making decisions based upon the commands and instructions that it's been given. I love that. I mean, it just pops right out, and there he is. So lastly, if you want to fly this like a regular drone, you can do that as well. They do have a remote that you can purchase with the drone and fly it manually. It operates just like you would expect it to. You put your phone in the cradle, and your phone becomes the FPV for the shot. And then you got your joysticks and all that kind of stuff, as you can see in this image. Here's some footage you can see as well of the drone flying with the remote. You can hand launch it, all that kind of stuff, and then fly the drone just like you would any other drone. Now, the object avoidance is always on, so you don't have to worry about crashing it. Some people are going to like that. Some people are going to hate that because they might want to get into some tighter spots. But it's also reassuring to know that you can whip through some trees and it's not gonna crash into the branches and crash your drone and end up having to replace propellers or worse yet, lose the drone. So it's a very, very capable drone from that perspective. There's other things I really like about it. These guys just thought about this thing all the way through, which to me is really, really cool because even for like heat dissipation, okay, you have two very high performance SoCs inside this thing, and those things are going to get hot. And so what they've done is the body is made out of magnesium, the skeleton, and so they're using that magnesium as a heat sink because it's a really good material to use as a heat sink. But then the way they placed everything, the heat will actually be drawn out into the magnesium body and out towards the propellers, and so now the propellers are not only are moving the craft, but they're actually acting as a fan to cool down the dissipate the heat. And so, to me, that's elegant. That's a very nice, refined design. And so, I find that, very impressive that these guys have just really thought about everything. Now, as I said, I know there are critics out there that are dismissing this out of hand. I think that's a mistake in my opinion. Some of their critiques have been around things like flight time, right? It's got a 23-minute flight time. Well, the Mavic 2 Pro specs out 31 minutes, but it's also specking out 31 minutes at 15.5 miles an hour, less than 50% of the capable speed of that drone. And so, if you're operating that drone, at faster speeds and things like that, you're not going to get 31 minutes out of that drone. And so my guess is, if I had to predict the difference in flight time between these two drones under normal circumstances, my bet is it's probably going to be about 3-4 minutes difference. The Mavic 2 will be longer, absolutely, because it's using a much less power hungry processor on it, and that's going to extend the flight time. But the actual difference between the flying time, my prediction is it's probably going to be 3 to 4 minutes difference. Now I could be wrong. We'll see. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there on the Mavic 2 on how long it flies on average when you're using it normally. Sometimes it might be longer than 31 minutes if you're flying slower. It might be less. It might be shorter than 31 minutes if you're zipping all over the place. So as far as distance, as I already said, the Mavic 2 Pro, 10 kilometers, that's great. How often are you flying 10 kilometers out? My guess is that's a very, very rare scenario, because you're violating FAA regulations anyway when you do that. But it's, for the guys that like to go out and chase the cruise ships and stuff, that might be important. I don't know. For me, it's not a big deal. Speed. Yes, the Mavic 2 Pros are faster. They do 44.2, 44.7 miles per hour, something like that. And so they can go wicked fast. But, this thing goes 36 miles an hour. And if you're whipping through trails as an action cam, my guess is you're probably not going faster than that. So this is probably going to be plenty fast enough. Again, how often are you, flying at 44.7 miles an hour? If you're a racer, I get it. Want that speed. But if you're a racer, you're not using a Mavic 2 Pro. You're using a much more capable sport drone for that. The image sensor, as I said as well, yes, the Mavic 2 Pro has a 1-inch CMOS sensor. The Skydio has the 1/2/3 sensor, but the image quality looks to be on par according to the Nomicam report, and the data looks solid. So, I don't think the critics are really looking at this drone for what it really represents. And to me, it's that architecture, that being updatable. Somebody compared it to the Tesla, and it's I would say that's an accurate metaphor for this thing, because you look at what Tesla's doing with their cars. They're doing software updates that add new features, new functionality, and that's what Skydio is going to be able to do here. As I said, I'm an engineer, guys. You don't build a product like this with this much performance capabilities in it unless you have a vision and a roadmap of some big time features you want to add in the future. So I expect that there's going to be a lot of great things coming from these guys as the clock rolls forward. So that's what I think makes this thing special. I think that's what makes this drone truly a milestone in the industry. And even if you don't like Skydio and you don't like this drone, you have to love what these guys are doing, the bars they're setting, because you can bet that DJI is fast and furiously working on something in their labs right now, that they have to do something differently and come out with something big in a big way. And instead of just doing minor little updates here and that, I mean, on the difference between the Mavic Air to the Mavic 2 Pro is minor, in my opinion. You know, the Phantom series. I mean, these things weren't leaps and bounds. They made things better. They added some things, but they weren't massive breakthroughs. Uh, they're going to have to step their game up now, right? Because if they don't, then they will start seeing folks flock to Skydio, because Skydio is going to be updating their stuff with software. You can almost guarantee it, you know, because of that architecture. And so they're going to be adding features. They're going to be making this thing a much more capable drone over time. And, you know, DJI has to respond to that. So, you know, if you don't like the Skydio, you got to love that they're gonna push your vendor forward to come out with some big updates. They have to. So there you go. There you have it. There's, you know, that's my opinion. That's why I think this thing is special. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you know, you give it a thumbs down twice. You know, that's you know, that's where things are at, I think, in this space. So thanks for watching. Do stay tuned for that video. I am going to do a much more detailed comparison between the SoC architectures of these drones, and I think you'll see from that video that there is a absolute night and day difference between these two. So do check out that one, and you know, we'll see you next time.